colors and paints are deeply rooted in Indian culture. We paint our homes before every festive season. We create the rangoli outside our house, and on the fourth day of Pongal, we paint the horns of the bull. And therefore, India buys 70,000 crore rupees of paints every year. And this 70,000 crore rupee industry is dominated by a single player with more than 50% market share, and that name is a household name, Asian Paints. But in the last few years, the dominance of Asian Paints is finally being challenged. Its market share is down 7% in the last 1 year, and its profit after tax for the last quarter of the financial year 2025 is 45% less than what it was in the financial year 2024. The MD and CEO of Asian Paints, Amit Single, said in a press interaction that this is the worst period for consumer demand in the last 2 decades. And in today's breakdown, we'll first begin by studying the history of the paints industry. We'll then look at how Asian Paints got so big. We will look at how Asian Paints is under attack from Birla Opus, and finally we look forward and say, what is the future of the paints industry? Welcome to Breakdown. Let's get right into it. The Breakdown YouTube channel is part of the 01 Media Network, which provides us with the resources, support, and other insights that allow us to make this high-quality business journalism available to you on the Breakdown channel. And with that, back to today's video. Paints had always existed in India, primarily in the form of chuna, which in English stands for lime wash. But the modern paints, like the one you see in my background, did not come to India until the early 1900s, and this is closely tied to the British colonial Raj in India. They had to paint railway carriages, the hull or the bottom of the ships that were transporting goods from their colonies to the United Kingdom, and they also had to paint the barracks, mansions, and other monuments which their citizens who were being deputed for duty in India would stay in or go to visit. In 1881, a company called International Paints was started in the city of Newcastle in the United Kingdom, and it is this company that is very closely tied to the history of the Indian paints industry. From 1881 to the early 1900s, the British were primarily importing chemical-based paints into India until 1902, when 2 young and enterprising British citizens decided to start a company called the Shalimar Paint, Color and Varnish Company in the city of Howrah in West Bengal. Now there are 2 types of paints. You have decorative paints and you have industrial paints. Both International Paints and Shalimar Paints were focused on the industrial paints use case. Shalimar was established in India in 1902. International Paints came to India in 1923. In 1928, Shalimar Paints was acquired by the Red Hand Compositions Company. The Red Hand Compositions Company in 1968 became a part of International Paints, which was now a global paints giant. And International Paints actually did an IPO for its Indian subsidiary in 1972. In 1989, this listed company was bought by the O.P. Jindal and S.S. Junjunwala Group. And since then, Shalimar has been revived. They set up a new paints plant in Nashik, Sikandrabad, and later Chennai. Now you'll be amazed to know that this complex merger, which finally resulted in a company called Shalimar Paints Limited, is actually listed even today on the Indian stock market. Before Asian Paints emerged in India, there were 2 more paint companies that were started, and these were Nerolac Paints in 1920, which was then called Gahagan Paints and Varnish, Berger Paints in 1923, which was then called Hadfields India. Asian Paints as we know it today began life as a company called Neptune Paints Trading Agency. The year was 1939, and the founders of Asian Paints began the business by selling paint. Then came World War II, and this created a paint shortage. It is this very shortage that prompted Neptune Paints Trading Agency to decide that they need to manufacture their own industrial paints and sell it locally in India. And this is how Neptune Trading Agency transitioned to the Asian Paints Company in 1942. It began its life in the industrial paints market with a paint product called red lead paint, which was typically painted on the hulls of ships and other cargo vessels. So there are a few key milestones in the Asian Paints journey that are worth highlighting. In 1954, in partnership with the iconic cartoonist R.K. Lakshman, they came up with their mascot Gattu. In 1968, they hired Ashwin Dani, who eventually became the MD of Asian Paints. And Ashwin Dani played a very important role in professionalizing Asian Paints, especially in its research and development or R&D to create various new lines of paint products. In 1967, they became India's dominant paints company with a 30% market share. In the 1970s, they decided to embrace technology in the big way by buying a CDC 6000 supercomputer in an era where Microsoft as a company did not even exist. In 1978, they began international expansion, starting with the very distant Fiji Islands. The most apt summary of this is that innovation leads to excellence, and their innovation is not just restricted to technology. They innovated in research and development, marketing, supply chain and distribution, and in technology. And we will cover these 4 points now, starting with research and development. When Asian Paints first entered paints manufacturing in India, there were broadly 2 types of industrial paints that were available. Dried distemper, which was a cheap product and it stuck to clothes with a foul smell. And the second was a plastic emulsion product, which was more expensive, that did not make it suitable for a lot of basic use cases for Indian businesses. And therefore, Asian Paints came up with a third new type of industrial paint, which is called washable distemper. And in fact, R&D became the core of Asian Paints after they hired Ashwin Suryakant Dani in 1996. And Amit Dani was responsible for the following product innovation at Asian Paints. Number 1, a computerized color matching system. Number 2, paints that could be coated on wooden furniture. Number 3, paints that could be coated on automotives to handle UV strain, and several other product innovations. Next came innovation in marketing. We had said that the innovative product that Asian Paints brought to the Indian paints market was the washable distemper. And their slogan at that point was, "Don't lose your temper, use washable distemper." And this slogan really clicked with the budget-conscious customers because for them the plastic emulsion product was far too expensive. The dried distemper product was a pain to work with. Now in 1954, Asian Paints launched a contest which was called Give Me a Name, and they offered an award of 500 rupees in 1954 to come up with a name for Asian Paints mascot. They received 47,000 entries, and the name which won was Gattu. The underlying idea here is they wanted to convey the idea that using Asian Paints is so simple that even a child can use it. Now it took 50 years for Gattu to be replaced by the next blockbuster ad campaign, Har Ghar Kuch Kehta Hai. In this case, the ad Har Ghar Kuch Kehta Hai was trying to convey that the way you paint your house on the exterior and in the interior is a mode for self-expression. The third innovation, which Asian Paints executed on incredibly well, was the supply chain and the distribution. Now, when it comes to supply chain, it is important for you to understand that the way paints are typically sold in India is through a dealer, and typically a paints manufacturer would offer a credit period to allow the paints distributor to accept the delivery of goods, sell the product to the customer, and then pay the paints manufacturer after some delay. The typical credit period or the norm in that industry was 180 days from delivery of the goods. But Asian Paints decided to launch a very interesting program where if the paints dealer were to repay Asian Paints for the delivery in 30 days or less, they would receive a 3.5% rebate on the total order that they had placed. If the dealer was able to repay Asian Paints in 3 days, the dealer would receive a 5% rebate on the order value. The paints industry operates at no more than a 5% margin. And this benefit for early prepayment resulted in very fast working capital cycles for Asian Paints, which allowed them to scale their business a lot faster than competitors. In addition to this, Asian Paints also launched something called a regular payment performance discount, where over and above this 30-day and 3-day rebate, those dealers who were regularly repaying within the 180-day period would also receive some concession. Related to working capital is also the way Asian Paints did distribution. Prior to Asian Paints entering the industry, all of the distributors had a wholesaler layer that sat between the manufacturer and the distributor. So from the 1940s to the 1970s, Asian Paints followed the wholesaler to distributor model. But from the 1970s onwards, they decided to go direct to the distributor. Today, Asian Paints reaches 1.6 lakh paint distribution points across India. And this brings us to the fourth aspect where Asian Paints innovated on, and that is technology. Earlier, we had said that Asian Paints had purchased a CDC 6000 supercomputer in the 1970s for almost 8 crore rupees. This major capex investment was also supported by the fact that GPS, the Global Positioning System, which was launched in 1973, was very quickly adopted by Asian Paints to track the position of all of its trucks delivering paints across the various dealer points in India. And by the 2000s, Asian Paints had actually started to take paint tinting machines from their own premises and installing this in the premises of their dealer. The beauty of having this tinting machine on site for Asian Paints dealers is that they were able to take their stock and create the exact tint or shade that their customers wanted. In addition to this, the presence of the tinting machine at the site of a paints dealer resulted in almost 3 times more sales of Asian Paints boxes. Asian Paints even today spends 100 crore rupees per year on their IT budget, and 98.5% of paint orders that are placed by their dealer network are fulfilled on the same day. In 2022, Mr. Kumaramangalam Birla said, Birla Opus is poised to transform the paints industry, and he commissioned 6 plants simultaneously to commence construction. And as per May 2025 reports, they are already at 50,000 distribution points. There is a catch here. I told you Birla Opus went from 0 to 50,000 distribution points in 1 year, and there is a reason for this. Birla Opus is a part of Grasim Industries. Grasim Industries is the largest shareholder with a 56% stake in Ultratech Cement. Ultratech is present across 2 lakh distribution points in India, and therefore Grasim is leveraging Ultratech brand and Ultratech distribution points to get Birla Opus to market as fast as possible. So let's ask the question, where did Birla Opus land in terms of market share in its first year of operations? Asian Paints had slipped 7% to 52%, Berger had 20%, Kansai Nerolac 12%, and Birla Opus had 7%. And the question now is, how did they do this? The answer is very simple. It was a combination of a pricing and a marketing blitz. Birla offered a 5 to 7% lower price for dealers across most categories. They combined this lower price with a volume-based incentive, which is to say that if you, the dealer, were able to sell 10 liters worth of paint today, you would get a rebate of 1 liter of paint delivered to your shop. The third play on pricing is Birla Opus delivered next generation tinting machines to the dealer network. Now these tinting machines from Birla Opus were about 40% smaller than the tinting machines that Asian Paints had sent back in the day to dealers. You need to understand that most dealers operate in a very compact warehouse, and therefore 40% less space being occupied by a sizably large tinting machine made it a very interesting incentive for more dealers to sign up to distribute Birla Opus. This is how Birla Opus used pricing and the tinting machine to build a deeper connect with the dealer network. Which brings us to marketing. And their tagline was, Naye Zamane Ka Naya Paint. Naye Zamane Ka Naya Paint is followed up with the line that says, Har Bar Wala. And Har Bar Wala is obviously a reference to Asian Paints. Grasim, which owns Birla Opus, has also followed the marketing blitz with really good on-ground execution. And a paints dealer in Uttar Pradesh told Reuters something very interesting this year. In 2023, Asian Paints was 70% of my paint sales. In 2024, it is 30%. Birla has offered me better margins and faster stock movement. And this quote from the dealer is an anecdote that supports the data. What does the data tell us? The profit has dropped from 1,256 crore to 692 crores in Q4 FY25. The paints industry continues to be a cyclical industry. The reason why it is cyclical is paints are primarily applied when homes are purchased or homes are sold, and therefore the paints industry tends to follow the Indian real estate or the construction industry, and therefore it goes through cycles of 30+% growth in a single year, which happened in FY12 and in FY22, and then it also goes through periods of very low or negligible growth. For example, in COVID, it grew less than 5% in FY20 and FY21. But this is the first time in the last 30 years that the Indian paints industry has actually shrunk in size by about 2%. And therefore, the macro lens on the Indian paints industry is that demand is actually weak, not just at the company level, but at the industry or the country level. The next is that this acceleration in competition is forcing foreign players to exit the market entirely. So on 7th of July 2025, Asian Paints sold its 4.42% stake in Akzo Nobel for about 735 crore rupees. And why did Asian Paints do this? The reason is its competitor JSW Paints signed a binding agreement to acquire 74.76% of Akzo Nobel for 9,000 crore rupees. And the reason why JSW Paints wanted to acquire Akzo Nobel is that both of these are in two very different places in the market. JSW Paints is focused on the industrial paint segment, whereas Akzo Nobel is focused on the decorative paints segment. And a lot of you have seen ads for Dulux paints. Dulux is the brand that Akzo Nobel uses in India. And with this competition intensifying, the industry is in complete turmoil. When we look at Kansai Nerolac, the share price is down about 6% in the last 1 year. The only player that seems to be benefiting here is Berger Paints, whose share price is up about 26% in the last 1 year. The share price of Berger has gone up because of good execution. Asian Paints CEO Amit Singhale has very aptly described Asian Paints' strategy as we are moving from taking a share of surface to a share of space. And this means that Asian Paints is moving beyond the paint segment to get into the home decor and furniture segment. They acquired Sleek International, which is a modular kitchen company, in 2013. SS, which is a bathroom fixtures company, in 2014. Weather Seal Fenestratio in 2022, which does windows and doors. White Teak, which does fans and ceiling lights. In FY21, approximately 1% of revenue came from the home decor business. In FY25, approximately 4.7% of revenue came from the home decor business. So the change is happening, but it's slow, and it might just be too slow. In June 2025, Birla Opus filed an antitrust complaint with the Competition Commission of India, stating that Asian Paints was directing its dealers to return or not use tinting machines that were supplied by Birla Opus. According to Birla Opus, Asian Paints was willing to pay a 1 or 2% higher commission to those dealers. The paints industry story is yet not fully written. Remember that Grasim Industries, which owns Birla Opus, still burning money in the process of growing market share. The Grasim's burn is up from 52 crore rupees per quarter at the start of the year to almost 288 crore rupees per quarter since a number of new plants of theirs are going online. And the paints industry is likely to be in a state of upheaval for the next 1.5 to 2 years until the end of FY27, when all of the planned capacity of Birla Opus goes online. And it's very clear that the incumbent Asian Paints is not sitting doing nothing. They are expanding into home decor. JSW Paints has gone and acquired Akzo Nobel. Berger seems to be executing on track. Therefore, this is an interesting industry that we would like to do a part 2 on breakdown in the next couple of years. That's all for today. We hope you liked today's breakdown. Do let us know what topics you would like us to cover next on breakdown, and hit the bell icon so you are notified when our videos are out next. That's all. Take care. Goodbye.